Welcome to the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. If you're looking to get more out of your Shenandoah Valley experience, then this is the podcast for you. You'll meet interesting people, the comedians that perform here, and find out more about what you can do and see. Whether you live here or plan to visit, listen to explore what helps make up our unique slice of heaven. Now here's your host, Dawn Davis Womack.
Hello, laughers. I can't wait to introduce you to these two hilarious comedians. Based out of DC, Winston Hodges, a X2 fan fave, is a sought-after rising comedy star who spent his time performing at comedy clubs with his southern charm and edgy wit. Winston hosts a couple of comedy podcasts for the Dead Dad Comedy Pod and the Winston's Games. He is also an award winner for his comedy special, Grieving Productively. Joel Byars is based out of Atlanta, Georgia. With 10 years in comedy, Joel is also a sought-after award-winning comedian, podcaster, and has his own comedy special, The Trophy Husband. Beyond the stage, Joel has been a writer for Comedy Central, The Weather Channel, and author of Finding Your Funny. On his comedy podcast, Hot Breath, Joel has interviewed Jeff Foxworthy, Nate Bargatze, Mark Norman, and many more. Welcome to the show, Winston and Joel. It's great to have you both on here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, this is so super exciting. I can't wait to dig in and get answers from two of my fave comedians out there today. So here's the first question. Nobody's story is the same. So I'd love to start with, how did each of you get started in comedy? And Winston, we will start with you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, mine's a pretty, I think, basic story. I wish I had something that's much more exciting. I just always liked stand-up. Thought it was great, but I knew how difficult it would be. So I was kind of scared to try it for a long time. And then I got out of a long-term relationship that was not great for either one of us. And I quit a job that I hated. And the Richmond Funny Bone had a comedy contest called Clash of the Comics, and they had just brought it back. They hadn't done it in a year, and they brought it back like the same month that those things had happened. And I was like, okay, well, I think I should try this. And then I went to the Funny Bone and did that contest, and I did pretty well. And I have been hooked ever since. And that was about 6 years ago. So that's my story.
I love that. How about you, Joel?
I started a little over 10 years ago. My senior year of college, I was about to graduate and realized I had nothing to lose because Sally Mae took it all.
Yep.
So I decided to follow a lifelong dream to try stand-up comedy. And as soon as I did, I never looked back. I headed straight for back home with mom post-graduation, really chase the dream and really make her life a nightmare. And then have just been pursuing it full tilt ever since, balancing day jobs in the meantime. But I'm very fortunate the past few years I've been able to make this my career. So it's been a journey, but I'm excited to be here and share it with you.
And I'm excited you're both here to share yourselves with us. I want to start with you, Winston, on this next question. That's really tailored to you. You have made a shift to doing comedy full time during COVID.
Yeah.
How
I've never been a great planner.
Yeah. So how has that been for you?
At first, it was pretty tough and slow, but I did notice that it's weird. I was at the point where I was making enough money doing it that it wasn't the same amount that I was making with my day job, but it was enough to where I was I could probably get close to my day job amount if I didn't have a day job. So I had to just make that decision. I was working virtually, and then my school asked us to come back, and I had already moved to DC. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not commuting 3 hours to work every day. That's not going to be a thing that I did. And I mean, it's been great. The first few months were rough, but I think because I jumped into the virtual space pretty well, I was able to make ends meet with virtual corporate gigs. And now that the world's opened back up, I'm able to take a risk on something and drive and go do shows on the road because I don't have to come back the next day and do stuff in person. So it has been a difficult but rewarding year. So COVID was pretty good to me. I'm not gonna lie. It gave me the push I needed to do this, I think, because I think it would have taken a lot longer for me to make the jump. because I would have just been too scared. But with, the pandemic happening, everything's already really scary. So one extra scary thing isn't so bad. But I'm glad that I did. I'm really happy with that decision.
It's a good decision. You were living in Richmond and now you're in DC. You're based out of there. And what has that allowed you to do that you weren't able to do before?
Oh man, it's been great for spending more money. It's allowed me to find out how little I actually need to live on a month. It's been good for that. No, it's been great. Now that stuff's opening back up in DC, like if I'm not on the road or I'm not doing a paid gig, I can do 2 or 3 open mics in a night. It's helped me to network with more comedians because we have more headliners coming through DC. And it's just made it so that like I was already driving really far on the reverse from Richmond to DC because I was coming up there like once or twice a month anyway. And now it's like, cool, I can still take gigs in Richmond. I'm closer to New York. I'm going to make my first trip to New York for comedy later this year. It's just really allowed me to diversify where I'm going and to make some new connections. And it's really, I think it's been really good for my comedy. Like, I think it's really helped me out a lot.
That sounds good. And maybe, a fitness program because you're eating
we'll
less.
See. You would think that. You would hope.
Okay. Well, we'll go to you, Joel.
Segue. Okay.
We'll go to you, Joel. We have a question for you. You have hosted what's called Right 10 Club, and maybe has had some other names, but we finally know it as Right 10 Club, and that's online writing club for comics that you started during COVID. I've been a part of that, and I'm very thankful for this experience. Can you share with our laughers what that is all about and where it is today?
Yeah, the Right 10 Club started as a way for me to write every day and be held accountable to do it during the pandemic. I mean, it all started with me. I wasn't writing, and I was like, oh man, I need some sort of motivation. So I started live streaming my writing. And then people were joining, and then people were joining and asking what I'm writing about. And then people were joining and then writing with me. So I was like, oh, this could become like a community event, really, for people to write new jokes. So it all grew from me just wanting to write more, but needing some sort of accountability. And to now for over a year, I think we ended up, I don't remember how many days, it was over 400 days straight. We did the Right 10 Club. A daily live stream at 10 a.m. And then now it's still a daily club, but it's a live stream once a week now. So the live stream is only on Mondays now, but there is still a daily word of the day to be a writing prompt for people to write a joke. So it's been growing and evolving, but it really has become something I've been able to, Dawn, we were connected before, but it's really created relationships, with comics around the world. So it's been very rewarding.
Yeah. So how does the format work? I know, but how does
we get a random word every day, which was so funny that a member of the community actually created this random word generator. He's like a coder or something. So he coded us a word generator to where I could just like click a button and it would generate a word, and that would be the word that we wrote that day. So you get a word, and then you get 10 minutes to write a joke using that word, and then I'll read them out loud and give feedback, and then we'll vote. People will post their jokes, and people will like the ones that they're voting for, and then the winner gets a fancy meme.
Yes.
A fancy meme of their joke. So everybody wins.
That's right. I got a winning meme.
I've only gotten like 2. It's very embarrassing. People are like, "You're running this?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm losing on purpose." All right, yeah.
That's right. You're encouraging other people by taking one for the team and allowing others to shine.
And it's been a good outlet for people who have thought about pursuing comedy but never have as well. Like I've seen several people who are like, "I always wanted to try it," and then I tried to write 10 Club, and then it inspired me to do a Zoom show, and now I'm doing live shows. Like I've seen people follow it that way too, to actually start pursuing comedy.
Yeah, actually over COVID, my husband Chris, who would listen a lot of times and give some input, on the Right 10, and now he's doing stand up. So
So
crazy.
That's so cool.
It is cool.
Wow.
Writing's a big part of our craft, and everybody seems to go about it a little different. And also it seems to evolve somewhat for comics. Can you each speak on your own writing process? Can we start with you, Winston? Can you?
Yeah, but before that, I will say is like I think that the right 10 thing is like that was perfect for people during this pandemic, Joel. Like it's kind of it's insane how many people that I've met since COVID has happened that like know your right 10 thing. Like it's like it, dude. It's insane where it's like like local comics in Richmond who are a couple that were like newer and like it gave them the courage to want to do it, and a couple people that have been doing it for a little while before the pandemic. They'll just name drop you in conversation, and it's just so and it's just a weird thing to just be like, yeah, I know that guy.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So you made like I don't know if you know how like wide reaching a bit of an impact you've had as far as like. Because I've heard of quite a few people that have like that either helped them get into comedy or it really held them accountable to do the writing thing. So I thought I'd share that because so someone said it, and I literally I was so glad that this was today because someone said your name last night at a comedy show that I was doing. They're just like, yeah, I was doing the right thing. I was like, oh, it's just like, geez. I was like, I'm doing the podcast that guy tomorrow. So.
Wow. I need to show this to my wife.
Yeah. Like, I'm like,
look, honey, it's working.
It's working. Give him a break.
She's like, oh, does Georgia Power take jokes? Is that how, is that how bills work now?
Yeah, you get electric in 10-minute increments.
I appreciate you saying that, Winston. Yeah, that's so cool to hear.
Yeah, it's pretty. It was pretty. I liked how the COVID. I thought it's cool to see how the comedy world is way more connected than you kind of realize because everybody's scenes kind of turned into one giant.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, it's really
for
cool.
a little bit. But the question about my process is, I don't know. Mine changes. Mine changed during the pandemic. Before COVID, I never sat down and wrote anything before I got on stage. I'm very much someone that's like, I'd have an idea. I would write one word that would make me think of the idea. And then I would get on stage and I would write on stage and riff and do crowd work or just like try things. And then the first time that the joke really works, I'll be like, all right, that's it. Now let's just add stuff to it. And then I would write it down. But with the pandemic doing Zoom shows, it is very hard to write on stage on Zoom. It is very difficult. And so for the first time, I would actually have the idea and make myself sit down and write the joke out with at least one punchline in it before trying it. And now that live comedy is back, I've kind of molded the two to where it's like I still do a ton of writing on stage, a lot of crowd work, a lot of interaction like that. But also if I have an idea that really makes me laugh before I get on stage, I will sit down and try to write it out so that I can get a big laugh with it first and then riff on it. So so it used to be purely writing on stage. And then it was a year and like 4 months of writing everything out. And now just trying to mold which I commend you for the 10 minutes a day because it feels so like writing like that felt so much like homework the last year and a half that I've just been like, I can't. I was a terrible student. I was like, I can't. So, but I've been able to mold the two. So that's my process.
Okay, great. How about you, Joel?
Mine's come from more of like a writing first, like style for most of my career. I mean, I started out doing one-liners and just my set list used to be like transcription of my set. Basically, I would basically like write it out like a script before I would go up there. And then over time it evolved into being a little more conversational. And then now I'm at a point to where I still write, but I'll also leave room for like improvisation or more writing on stage, as Winston said, to where maybe something happened and maybe I'll talk about it on stage and then see where it sticks from there and then write about that off stage as well to really start to fill it out. But it's really evolved from being super meticulous and every word matters to being a little more loose now in the development, but once you get to like the end product of like, if you're doing a comedy special or whatnot, it would be like word for word, you know, like my comedy special was definitely, by the time I taped it, it was like a script. Except for the part where I forgot my jokes. I did forget my jokes at one point during my special, and I left that moment in. But overall, though, I like to be as conversational as possible and really draw from my own life. That's really where I find the most inspiration to create material, is around my own life and my experiences and what my unique point of view on the world is. And that's really what I've learned from interviewing so many comics as well, is like figuring out what is your unique perspective. If you're married, okay, everyone married has marriage jokes basically, but what is your unique point of view on marriage? What is your unique opinion or experience that's going to make it uniquely yours? So it's a constantly evolving process, but I love the puzzle of figuring out jokes.
I like that too. When it's your unique perspective, it's a lot harder for people to steal your jokes too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that happens, unfortunately. Yeah. So if it's your story, you know, I have an NFL son. Not everybody can say that. And Winston knows I have a few jokes.
That's true.
That. Yeah.
And I know him.
Ooh, flex. Ooh.
He does. We may see him at the August show. We'll talk about that.
That would be great.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
A little shout out for him, plug to get him there. But yeah, I think that's a great answer. And that also lends to my next question is, who are your biggest comedy influences and what impact have they made on your careers? Winston?
Oh man, that is a great question. That is one that like I have always struggled to answer, because it's like I grew up watching. So like when I was really young, the first stand-up I watched was like a bunch of Christian stand-up comics, because it's like my parents were religious and I was young, but they liked stand-up, but they were like, we'll let him watch. This is as clean as it gets. We know that he's not going to see anything here. And then I graduated to just like other clean comics, like Jeff Foxworthy and Sinbad were two of my favorites when I was a kid. Yeah, I love both those guys. Yeah, Sinbad's unreal. He's he's unbelievable killer. It's
unbelievable.
It's really hard to like stress to people. Like seeing Sinbad live was like, I saw when I was like 17 and it was a game changer. I was like,
oh my gosh, I have yet to see him live.
It was amazing. But like those guys, and then I got old enough to where it was like I would just watch all the Comedy Central specials that would come out where they would do their half hours. So as far as like specific comics, is it's like I always liked Sinbad's ability to just like kind of work the room and just kind of improvise a little bit. And I like to do that. I like Jeff Foxworthy's ability to like do jokes from a Southern perspective, but not always come across like the biggest moron in the room, which I kind of appreciate that. But then just like, I also really like Patton Oswalt and like Daniel Tosh and people like that who like the thing. It's less, I'm taking these people's styles or like their styles inspired me, and more, there's so many comics that I watched and thought were so good at comedy and were so cool that I was like, I have to do this one day. So like Chappelle, Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neill, and then also all the old clean kind of like Sinbad and Foxworthy are just a lot of people that were like, these people made me want to try stand up because of how cool I thought they were. I was like, you guys are so cool. I want to do this. So a lot of wide, unique styles inspire. I like most types of comedy. So
that's great. How about you, Joel?
Yeah, Sinbad is the first comic I ever saw on TV. It was Afros and Bell Bottoms, and
I've seen Afros and Bell Bottoms like 700 times.
Oh my God.
It is one of the best and funniest specials ever. It's so good.
Incredible. Yeah. And his ability to just be a sheer entertainer and just, I mean, there's just so many levels to him. And I'm excited to see him live someday and get him on the podcast.
Yes.
That would be great. He would be a great guest.
Yes, get him on there.
He said he would do it before the pandemic, and then he also had a stroke, and he kind of went off the radar for a while. So we'll come full circle with that. But he was one that I saw and inspired me to like, oh, that looks fun. I'd like to do that, just because he was so goofy and loose and playful. He was wearing crazy clothes, and but the first comic I ever heard was actually Mark Lowry.
Dude, Mark Lowry was the first Christian comic I heard. I saw him live too. Yeah.
I said Christian comedian. I was like, oh, I bet he knows Mark Lowry.
Yeah, Mark Lowry, man, that was the dude. That was him and Sinbad were the first two stand-ups that I was like allowed to watch and also able to be like, these dudes are great. Mark, I've met him once when I was a kid. He was I was like 13 and saw him live at a county fair. And he signed, I was with my family and he signed a book after he did a show at a county fair. He did like an hour at a county fair.
Oh my gosh.
And he signed a book and was very encouraging to like a 13-year-old he didn't know. So I'll let you get back to what you're saying. But yeah, Mark Lowry. I didn't say his name because I didn't want to get too deep in the woods of Christian comedy. But yeah, I love Mark.
Look what you started, Don. Look at
Right?
I've never been able to talk to anyone about Mark Lowry. Like that's the thing is like it's not if you're not in that world, people don't.
Yeah,
incredible, amazing storyteller. Yeah, and he was another one who was just having fun and he was very playful. And Steve Martin was another one who just always fun and playful. And like I always liked that style and just that energy of like really giving people like a fun experience. Like they feel better after going to the show. Some people have the comedy style that is like more, I want to make you think and change the way you think about the world or see the world. But I like that feel good funny. I just want people to feel better leaving the show than they did arriving at it, you know? So any comic that does that, I'm a fan of, but I'm a fan of comedy in general. Like really, anyone who gets on that stage, I respect that they're willing to even stand up there and deliver jokes, which is more than most people in the world would be able or willing to do, you know? So I just love comedy, all styles. But I think Steve Martin is probably like, if I were to pick like my favorite, it's Steve Martin just for all he did as stand-up. But then also on the business side, he was the first comic to sell out arenas. And now he's also become, you know, like a director and a writer and all of this as well. So he's done so much beyond stand-up as well, which I also want to do with my own career. But there's so many comics out there. But Mark Lowry and Sinbad, we're going to have to get matching tattoos when we do the show together.
That's great. That's so funny.
One on each arm.
Yeah, you're officially the first other comedian I've talked to that likes Mark Lowry.
He's so good.
Yeah, he was great, man. I loved him so much as a kid. Oh, man.
Those are really great influences. That's for sure. I love all of those that you mentioned. And I like what you said about Steve Martin too. He's broadening his talents in different arenas. And you are actually already doing that, Joel, because you offer comedy classes and you mentor comics. And I'm wondering, do you think people can get funnier, or is it like singing or athletics where some natural ability is required? In other words, can anyone learn to do it?
I think anyone can learn the fundamentals. Like within comedy, there's like writing structure and technique that anyone can learn. But to the degree that you can actually execute on that, like there's only like one Jimi Hendrix. Like people learn to play a guitar, but not everyone's going to be Jimi Hendrix. I think the same is with comedy. And I've seen that, like even in the Right 10 Club, like I've seen people come into the Right 10 Club and they're writing an entire paragraph based on this word. And then a few months later, they're writing one-liners using this word. So I have seen the evolution of someone who's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, this is how a joke works. Here's the technique. But I think a lot of the times comedy classes can get a bad rap. One, because a lot of people that teach them don't even do stand-up.
Oh my God.
They really don't. That's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And literally like I started them with the motivation to do it the right way. And I mean, there's hours and hours and hours of free content out there that like I've shared about comedy, and anyone can listen to the podcast and learn comedy as well. But if they want a little more like hands-on approach to the development, I'm happy to do that. But by no means, you don't have to take a comedy class to become a comedian. And you taking one doesn't mean you're going to become like Jerry Seinfeld, because there is only one Jerry Seinfeld. But a class can help you with the learning curve of banging your head against the wall for years, trying to figure out even what is a joke, how do you structure it, and all of that. So to answer your question directly, I think you can learn the fundamentals and the techniques, but to what degree you actually excel as a comedian is really up to you, your work ethic, and then also your natural ability as well.
Right. What do you think, Winston? Would you agree with that?
I mean, yeah, I think it's like, I used to like, when I started, because I didn't take a class, and I've had the same issues with some of them. I have friends that have taught classes, and I'm like, okay, they do stand up, that's cool. But I've seen a lot that are like people that aren't active in stand up, and like when they were active in stand up, it's people that I'm just like, you were terrible at stand up. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're so bad. But then it used to just like really frustrating to me, and then I got to the point where I was just like, not everybody is doing comedy for the same reasons, and that's okay. So like, I'm doing it because it's all I want to do. I need it to be my career. It's something that I want to be great at. But also, it's just like, there's people that just want to try stand up. There's people that, and I like stand up so much because there is very little barrier to entry. Like, there's like, if you want to be a musician, you have to buy instruments. You have to do these things. If you want to like do like a bunch of other, like, I mean, you want to record things, you got to get a camera and all these things like that. If you want to do stand up, you just have to go to an open mic. Mm-hmm. Like, and unless you're in New York or LA, they're free. Like, there's no, that's why you get crazy people that do them. But I used to just have issues with the stand-up classes, but now I'm just like, oh yeah, it's like, I think anybody can write 5 minutes. That's what I think. I think anybody has enough interesting things that has happened to them that you would be fun to listen to for 5 minutes. But I think that's it. The next step would be like you need the natural talent to be able to make things that normal people don't think are funny into something that's funny. Like the not big stories that you can turn and exaggerate a little bit. So I think it's a good mix of like, you can teach people to do 5 minutes with the joke structure, but like once you get past the first 5, it's like, we're now molding your individual talent and trying to bring that out of you. And some people just don't have it, but that's okay. I can't play any instruments. That's fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And there's a hustle to comedy that I don't think people understand until they get into it, of like, oh, you need to live on stage, and you do sometimes drive 5 hours for $50, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the people that I've actually like have joined my classes aren't even like aspiring professionals. Like Winston said, it's like, oh, I've always wanted to try this.
Yeah, which is great.
I'm in public speaking. I think this will help. Or I've had like accountants are like, oh, this may be a fun way to talk to my clients, So it's like, it's across the board. I think everyone can benefit from comedy, though. I think comedy enhances everyone's lives. So I agree with Winston on that, though, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. What you said, Winston, made me think of Nate Bargatze's Mount Rainier Dead Horse, bit. Have you guys heard that?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, Nate's amazing. But I agree. That's one of it's just, I think that's when you get to the real talent, is when a comic can take something that literally countless people have looked at that, and he not only made it funny, he made it so memorable that's one of his signature bits. Like that is one of those things where like that bit is as popular as he is. It's just the type of thing where you're like, yeah, that bit's great. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, that's a good point, Don.
Yeah, absolutely. So laughers, Google it, Nate Bargatze, Mount Rainier, you'll find it. And if you haven't seen it yet, it is so good. You do need to see it. There's no question about that. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you both on here today, mainly because it kind of highlights X2 Comedy's brand, which is clean comedy PG-13. X2 works with comedians that work clean exclusively, or blue comics that can do a clean set. The PG, yeah, they're laughing because they know it's coming next. The PG-13 is there because we find our blue comics line of clean tends to be a little looser than our clean comics. Not mentioning any names.
I have every time I've done your show, I let you set the tempo for what we talked about. So I got her good last time, Joel, because she did a joke about like either giving birth or something like that, and then so I referenced it to her son who was there, and I was like, I can say it. Dawn talked about it. I'm allowed to do it. So very much make sure.
Yeah, we've had a little banter back and forth consistently about
Yeah.
this over the last few years, which is a lot of fun. And then we have our clean comic on this podcast today, Joel Byars. You work exclusively clean, Joel. Why did you choose to go that route, and has it always been that way for you?
Yeah, I think maybe it was like an influence from watching Sinbad, who's clean, and Mark Lowry, who's always clean. Maybe I was just always naturally attracted to that style of comedy, just being cleaner. Really, it came down to, and it's coming down now, is like I'm a full-time comedian, is like I just want to be able to entertain as many people as possible. So my goal for the future is that I'm like at my shows, I have like grandkids to grandparents there, and I'm able to entertain everyone. So that's always just been my goal. And I have comics ask me all the time, oh, should I not be dirty or whatnot? And I never tell a comic like, you're doing this wrong, or yes, you shouldn't do this or that. I think this is your comedy journey. You do what you want. You say what you want, as long as it's funny.
Agreed.
Yeah,
It's gotta be funny, kids.
Yeah.
Funny wins every time. So
Yes.
my personal preference is being clean because you can entertain more people. And I mean, I've booked gigs. I've booked like family reunions and birthday parties and corporate potlucks just because I can be clean and they know that I'm not going to like go in there and drop a bomb. People are just going to have fun and then move on with their day, So that was always just from the beginning. I always had that approach. I just wanted to be able to entertain as many people as possible.
Great. Yeah, and as we've already established, Winston, you are a blue comic that does clean sets for us and a lot of other people too. Do you find it easy or challenging, and if so, in what ways?
It's more so like I do just as well clean as I do blue. Like because like I mean, if I look at all my material on paper, less than 5% of it is stuff that I can't make clean. Like it's 5% is dirty jokes. The other 95% is just like, I curse. So like the toughest part for me isn't the getting material or like whatever. It's just the one thing that is just when children are there. Like, and it's not anything against children. It's just like, I don't want to say things that go over the kid's head because it's still like, I don't know, bombing for children still hurts like bombing for adults. So it's like, what do we do here? But that's the most difficult is I do think some of the cleaner shows is it's just like, there's just like babies in there. Like there's like toddlers. Yeah. It's like, and that's, to me, that's the most difficult thing, but it's like, I like working clean. I would say of my sets, a third of them I do are clean. And I would say half of my paid work is clean sets. Cause it's just like, I'll do churches, I'll do corporate events, and I love making everybody laugh. And I like that my brain isn't just like, I like that all my stuff isn't crazy dirty. I like that it's just, let's take the curse words out and change it. I will say, other than kids, I think the most difficult thing of a clean show is how, when you go to a clean show, Dawn, you do a great job of letting the comics know exactly what is clean to you. A lot of showrunners are very bad about letting comics know exactly what the line is. So I want to know what words I can't say. I want to know what topics I can't talk about. And I would say 50 to 60% of the clean shows I do, they're just like, use your best judgment. I'm like, I have no good judgment.
I'm a comedian.
I'm doing stand-up comedy and I'm in a church basement right now, 7 hours from home. I have no. So what is it? So I always look at it like church clean, which is like no topics, no swearing, stuff like that. And then you're clean, which is like, I could probably talk about some topics I'm not going to talk about in church, but I'm not going to be vulgar. I'm not going to swear. And then there's other people that are just like, yeah, you can. And I mean, I'm not going to say any swear words on this podcast, but like there's other clean shows that are like, you can say the H word, you know what I mean? Like you can talk about that, or you can say the D word, like where they're like, that's fine to say. It's just don't say G. And there's so many different ranges of clean that as a comic that works both, I'm just like, you need to tell me exactly what I cannot do because I'm going to do everything you tell me that I can do. It's like, I'm going to use every tool that I have. So I think that's the most difficult part, but clean comedy is hard. There's a lot of people that struggle really hard to do it. So your ability, Joel, to like just focus and that be your thing. I respect that. That would be, I don't know that I could do that. It would be very difficult for me. Cause it's like, do you think of jokes that are like, are there times where you think of jokes that you can't do? Or have you been doing it so long that your mind doesn't even wander to those places?
Yeah, I'll go to those places, but I don't stop there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like I still allow myself to explore from every angle, every idea, but I don't, if I find something where I'm like, I don't know, all right, what's an alternative to that? And like, start to build it that way. And like at open mics or something, like if it's just like an open mic at 6 p.m. at a coffee shop, you know, where it's me and the barista and that's it, you know, I may like just in the moment, if I'm improvising or something, I may say something or like swear or like, you know, like just in the creative process of just throwing something against the wall in that survival mode of being on stage. Yeah. But I am mindful of like, I do want to make sure that whatever I am doing does translate more broad than that. Yeah. See, and that's what I like about working both is my mind can go literally wherever, and it's like I can try whatever, and then I'm just being like, all right, well, I can put this joke in the box that I'll do half the time. And it's like, and I'm like, I know it. That's like, and then I'll every now and then I'll rap like, oh, I wrote a great joke about bowling. That'll be done every show. Let's do that. And I'm grateful though, like, I guess a thing and a note maybe for comics isn't like thinking of clean versus dirty is like, there was a moment I did a show, I was headlining the Comedy Zone in Charlotte like a year ago or so, maybe 2 years now. That's a great club, man. Congrats. It's awesome. It was for like a fundraiser for like ASPCA. And they told me I was doing 30 minutes clean. And then I got there and he was like, can you do 45? And like, I was so grateful. Like I wasn't sure if I could do 45, but I was like, I can fill 45. But I was just so grateful that like, if I had whittled together only my cleanest 30 minutes and then he's like, can you do 45? Like, I would have been like, I don't know if I can. Like, even like Mark Norman talking about opening up for Seinfeld, he was like, I had to go back to like every album I've ever done. He's like, he had to piece together a 20-minute clean set so he could just open for Seinfeld. So it can relieve a lot of stress and worry if you do have at least some clean material to go to in case something does pop up, you're ready for it. Yeah, it also just helps. Like, it's like, I try to tell comics, if you're at a point where you're like a working comedian and you have 15 clean minutes, it's like you can get so much more work just for 15, because 15 you can lie and say you can do 25 and stretch it. Dude, I think that's where like I accepted an hour set clean, like my first 2 years in comedy, and it's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna do clean crowd work for 45 minutes, and that's what I did. It was just clean crowd work, and they loved it. But it's the type of thing of just like being able to be in the clean mindset. You can do so many different shows, and like, I don't know, I don't like comics that like, I know so many comics are like, I'm not gonna do any, I don't want to work clean. I'm just like, it's still comedy. Like it's all comedy. Come on now, what are you doing? Like, but yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I was just curious, man, because I've always wondered, like, talking to a purely clean comic, if like, because my problem is my brain goes everywhere, and it'll go to a dirty place, and I'll be like, all right, I'll do this, and this won't do it everywhere. But for comics like you and like my buddy Steven Rogers and stuff like that, where it's like, all you guys are great, but you guys are all very clean. It's like, do your minds even go there, or have you just trained yourself to be able to just to shut it off? But that's cool. Thanks for sharing that with me. That's a question I wanted answered. Sorry for asking. Taking over the podcast. That's really curious.
See, this is what happens when you do a podcast with other podcasters. But I think unseriousness, it adds to it too. It really does open yourself up to a lot more work. I notice even you go to shows, the dirty comics or blue comics, I will have a cleaner comic open up for them. Yeah. It's very common. So you're not only going to open yourself up in clubs, but you're going to open yourself up in corporate markets and other places where people are really looking for that. So I think that you have a good point there. It is a bit of a different mindset, but I don't think it's as much of a leap as people think it is.
I agree, especially because there's plenty of comics that I know that like are like, oh, I could never work clean. And I look at their act and I'm just like, you just have to not swear. Like, it's like what you're doing is clean. Like, you're doing clean comedy, but you're like me and you just curse naturally and you're trying to make your act more conversational. So it's like, I get that, but it's like, you're talking about breakfast foods and like this is plain. You're not like, I don't know, you're not Sam Kinison on stage. Like you're talking
right.
I've been in my mom's basement,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, come on.
So, yeah, they could do it. And that's another reason why we provide that brand here at X2 Comedy is we want to provide an opportunity where comics may want to learn how to branch out in that way and do some more clean sets. So the PG-13 gives them a little wiggle room too.
Yeah.
We're just not looking for a show that's riddled with vulgarity and, profanity.
Oh man. Joel, one night I was like running a show and I introduced Dawn as the dirtiest comic in all of Virginia.
And the first comic
the first on the show was like, your next comic is disgusting.
Your day is coming, Winston. You haven't had it yet.
I know, I'm waiting for it.
Threw her in the deep end there.
I'm waiting for it.
And they still laughed. So
she did great.
Yeah.
No surprises there.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is super fun. I'm loving this. Joel, I want to talk about your podcast, Hot Breath. It focuses on the craft of comedy, and you have interviewed some big name comics. What has been your favorite interview so far and why? I know. You can pick more than one if you
I know.
want.
I mean, I don't know. I've interviewed over 300 comedians now. I mean, all right, there's definitely a few milestones, I would say. I think the first milestone that comes to mind, I think would be like when Bo Burnham's people reached out to me about having him on the show to promote his movie that he was coming out with. That was a moment. I think that was the first time like an agency or like someone's team had reached out to me about coming on the show.
Nice.
And that was like a moment of like, oh, I guess people are listening or people are noticing, so that was a nice milestone. I think if I were to pick one, I honestly think Jeff Foxworthy, because it took like 5 years to actually go from the idea of having him on to then him actually being on the show. So like it was the whole process of back and forth and seeing him a few times. And like, it was just a whole like kind of ride to actually get him on the show. So when he was actually on there and I'm looking at him, I was just like, is this happening? We're doing this right now, Yeah. But, I mean, there's so many, and each one is kind of like, it has its own like unique kind of story behind it, but if I were to pick one, I would say that Jeff Foxworthy, just because he's Jeff Foxworthy and because of like the amount of just work it actually required for him to come on the show. Deservedly so. I mean, it ended up being, we'd been talking via email and then he was like, hey, how about Monday? And it was like Sunday. And I was like, all right, we'll do it tomorrow. Yeah. It was just like that. Okay, we're doing it. So that one was like, oh, okay, cool. Anything's possible,
Yeah, I really like that one too. I can't remember the exact number, but I do remember that one thing that stood out to me in that interview was how many jokes he'll sit down and write a night. It was like 250 some jokes in a
insane
night, on an incredible consistent basis.
Yeah, and talk about clean. He's a guy who and a thing that I adopted from that interview is his mindset of like the empty parking spot. Like he's always, it's kind of like blue collar. He's like, oh, Kings of Comedy are doing this with their audience. We could do that with our audience. And then they started the Blue Comedy Tour. Like Cards Against Humanity is a fun game, but it's very dirty. He's like, oh, let me create one of those let me create a card game I could play with my aunts and uncles. And he created a clean version of Cards Against Humanity. He's like, that's an empty parking space I was able to fill. So, and he like sat down and like wrote the whole game in like one night. He just pull them out on note cards and he played it the next day with his family and tested it like that. But he's willing to put in the work. It's not like he stumbled into success. Like he's very talented and he works very hard for what he's getting. So it's all deserving and inspiring.
Yeah, it's a really great podcast. If you're interested in the craft of comedy, I highly recommend that you look it up. It's Hot Breath. That's Hot Breath, correct?
Yeah.
That's-
Well, you've said it like 4 times. Am I saying that right? Is it hot breath? Yeah.
It's funny, really, hone in that point that they really need to check that out.
Brad. Yeah. It's on every podcast platform and it's also on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah. Winston, you have recently filmed an award-winning comedy special, Grieving Productively. Can you share the inspiration behind it and what impact that's had on you?
Yes.
And that you hope it has on others?
Yeah. So the inspiration behind it was my dad died. That was the inspiration. No, I just, I don't know. I dealt, when my father passed, first got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I did a set that night and I talked about what was going on, and it was just very cathartic for me because I didn't know where to go. When I got that news, I was like, I want to be with my friends. But all my friends are comedians. And I was like, well, I'm not going to just do my regular jokes. Like I asked to go in a spot where I won't ruin the show. I asked for a little bit more time than I would normally get. I was like, hey, it's like, can you put someone really good after me and good before me? I said, because I don't know how this is going to go. I'm just going to go on stage and I kind of just have to talk about what's going on. But I didn't want to be the guy that derails the show by having a mental breakdown in the middle of an open mic. Like, I'm not trying to ruin people's nights. And I did it, and that felt so cathartic. And I did a set the night he passed away, and I was just like started to work on this material. And then it got to the point where I had 25 to 35 minutes of stuff about my dad passing away. And it's like, I can't just do that all the time. I can't just be the dead dad guy, like that goes up and opens for a headliner. And it's just like, what's your 30 minutes about? It's like, well, it's just going to be about my dad for a half an hour. So hope you're ready to follow that. And I just wanted to create something on like the 1 year anniversary of his passing. And so I just made myself sit down and I filmed Zoom shows and live shows, and I took old sets and I just weaved them all together with like where the setup was me in the graveyard talking to my dad's tombstone, and then individual punchlines would be from different sets, and then just tied it all together. So the inspiration was like, I just needed to be done with that material, and I wanted to kind of do like a tribute thing for my dad. So I haven't done any of those jokes since that came out. So that was basically it. It's the first time where I've ever done something and been like, I'm done with this material. Like, it's just like, I just can't. I've written some more dad stuff since then, but in general, it's like, I'm just like, it's run its course. It's out there if people want to watch it. And I'm hopeful that people will watch it and it'll make them feel better about their fathers or their loved ones passing, or just feel more comfortable being on stage and talking about things that aren't really comfortable things to talk about. This is what I hope people take away from it. But the feedback's been pretty good. The awards were nice. But the best part was just having people reach out and be like, my dad died and I love this. This was like really cool. Like, this makes me feel good. And you made me laugh at, the best was some dude was like, you've made me laugh at things I thought I would never, ever, ever think were funny. And I was like, yeah, that's great. You can't ask for more when you release a comedy special, is people to be like, you made me laugh at something that I vowed I would never find funny. And I was like, cool, man. So that's the inspiration stuff for the Grieving Productively.
Yeah, laughter is really healing.
I agree
100%. And losing someone is traumatic. I'm actually a trauma survivor myself. And so one of the mechanisms of coping with it is humor. And I find sharing that humor with other people, you never know what people are going through when they come to your shows,
Exactly.
And then you're helping them kind of do a life reset button and feel like they're normal again. And they're not the only one who had the crazy aunt or lost a dad,
Yeah.
They're not alone anymore. It's a beautiful thing. And I love that. And I highly recommend watching his film, Grieving Productively. I think one of my favorite surprises of that film was you have actual live footage of your dad on stage at the end.
That was cool. I forgot I had that. I knew I had the audio of it, and then I got on YouTube and saw the video, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna rip this. And it was the one time he got on stage with me, and it was I was glad to be able to add that after the credits. It was like a nice little bow on top of everything. So
yeah, so make sure you watch after the credits. That's the only way you can see it. So don't miss that nice little bonus there. Yeah, that was fun. I wanted to ask both of you, what do you see for the future of comedy? What do you see? What do you envision for the future of comedy? Yeah, don't both go at once.
I didn't know. I didn't know his partner was.
I'm going to say Joel because I feel like he had something.
Yeah.
I was like thinking. I think more than ever, comics we have the tools to create our own success. Like with technology, I think we're a comic, but we're also a director, we're editor, we're actors. I mean, I think there's so many facets to being a comedian beyond just like staying on stage and telling jokes. And I think there's comics like Andrew Schultz, Mark Normand as well, like people who have really just kind of paved their own path just by creating a lot of funny content and building a fan base on it. So I think comics now more than ever have the opportunity, and that's, Winston released his own special. I released my own special. So many comics are starting to do that. And I think that's just one of the many things that we can do. So I'm looking at it from like the comedian mindset of point of view. I don't know from like an audience's mindset what the future is, but I think more than ever, comics are finding their audience and they can just cater to that audience. Whether that, it's like Jeff Foxworthy can like blue collar people, like he found an audience and he can really provide a lot of laughs to them. And so many other people can have been able to find an audience and just build an entire successful career, just entertaining people who get what they're doing. You don't have to be so broad strokes of like getting everyone under the sun to laugh at you. You just find people that resonate with what you talk about and you can build a career off of that.
Yeah. How about you, Winston?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think the other thing is like, I think we're moving into like what the definition of comedy is changing to where I think as we go more and more into the future, you're going to have more specials and acts that are similar to like Hannah Gadsby's Nanette or Bo Burnham's Inside, where it's like they're really blurring the line of like what is a comedy special. I think that's going to be like what we see in the next 5 to 10 years because it's just stuff that's like you might not seem 100% like stand up, but it's really difficult to call it anything else other than stand up comedy, where it's funny enough. But it's going to be way more like, I think we're going to see bigger productions and stuff like that. Like Bo Burnham's Inside, it's insane. Like it's so good, but it's just like all the work he put into it. And it's just like, man, so the comedy can be anything. So I think that's the definition of it, I think is expanding. So I think that's like the biggest change we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, that's a really great segue into this next question. So for the aspiring comics, then how important do you each think nowadays it is to be in Boston, New York City, or LA?
I mean, personally for me, like I started in Atlanta and I've stayed here because I wanted to create my own success and really show other comics you don't have to move to like New York or LA to find opportunities. And then we're seeing that Dusty Slay from Nashville has been able to build an entire career just by living in Nashville, so there's several examples now of people not needing to move. I've had friends who moved to New York and LA and they've gotten on late night and they have writing jobs and they did it. They moved, they climbed the ladder, they've done it, So there's no one way to do this, but I don't think you have to move to LA or New York or anywhere just to pursue and find opportunity. I think you can create your own opportunities for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think we're moving away from having to, because now it's like New York and LA, and then now with all the exodus of people from LA to Austin, it's like, is Austin going to be the next thing for the next 5 or 10 years? I think that if you want the path of, if you want the straightest path to getting on late nights and getting a writing job, like that path of stand up, you need to go to New York or LA. Like, I think it is. I think that like Dusty got late night sets living only in Nashville, but it's like, I think that's more the exception that proves the rule, where it's just like, he is a very unique and a great comic and an individual. But I think for every one person that can do it the way that Dusty did it, like the late night to the stuff and working, if you want to be the guy that's doing 8 spots a night, like if you want to be running back and forth with the clubs, for every Dusty Slay, there's 25 or 30 people in New York and LA that have done it. And it's like that. But I agree as far as like, being successful or being a great road comic or being well respected or getting to work clubs or making a living, you absolutely do not have to be in New York and LA anymore. It's a very specific type of, like if you want to be a Normand or a Marill, like that type of where you're doing these clubs and then you go out on the weekend and you get a bunch of late night stuff. In my mind, I feel like you still kind of have to do New York and LA just because that's where almost all the industry is. But you can be in Atlanta, and they do all types of filming in Atlanta if you want to do more acting stuff. And Austin, I think, is going to be the next big thing. And then you've got Chicago's doing great and Denver. Like there's all these other bigger cities. But if you want the late night and maybe like if your mind is like, oh, SNL or late night, or I want a writing job on these shows, I think New York and LA is still the place you have to go, just because it's like you got to be near what you want to do. It just makes it easier.
Yeah, and that's something I interviewed Tamara Goins, who's the head of comedy at Innovative Artists, like an agency in LA, and I asked her this question, and she said like, you don't have to move to like LA or New York, but it's like just know your chances are greater there. Of like, if you're at a comedy club, the chances of Judd Apatow walking in and seeing you perform is much higher than if you're in, Richmond or whatnot. And like Nate Bargatze, he got discovered by Jimmy Fallon because he was doing a spot at a comedy club in New York, and Jimmy Fallon walked in, watched him perform, and then the rest is history. So it just, for comics, it's like, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to take your comedy career? And that can inform the decisions you make around it.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Or you can perform here in the Shenandoah Valley.
Yes.
Hey, we made it.
Yeah, that's right. That's when you know you're making it. I envision big names coming through here.
We're going to be there. Yeah,
exactly. Before we talk about that though, and as we wrap up here, can you share with our laughers how they can follow you on social media or otherwise, Winston?
Yeah, you can just follow me at winstonhodges.com. It has access to all my podcasts and my YouTube and all that stuff. And then if you just purely want to stick to social media, at Winston H Comedy on Twitter is pretty much exclusively 18 and up, but my Instagram is Instagram's cleaner. Instagram's cleaner because it's mostly just pictures of me doing shows. But all those are at Winston H Comedy, and same thing for TikTok. I'm going to start posting more stuff on TikTok. But
okay, and you, Joel? Yeah,
my website is joelbyerscomedy.com. That's where you can find my comedy special, The Trophy Husband. And if in terms of social media, at Joel Byars Comedy. On all platforms, you can find me there. And the podcast is called Hot Breath, and it's available on all podcast platforms and YouTube.
Excellent. And laughers, we'll make sure that's in the show notes as well, so you can look for that there. If you're driving and can't exactly write it down at the moment, we'll make sure we take care of you there. Well, thank you, Winston and Joel. This has been super fun, and you all have been insightful and hilarious per your usual.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been so good. And laughers, you can catch these two perform live for an exclusive X2 comedy show August 12th, only at Cross Keys Vineyards. Yours truly will host the show, and JMU professor Chris Womack will open for these two sought-after comedians. Don't miss out on pairing your wine with their punchlines. Buy your tickets today at crosskeysvineyards.com. We'll be sure to put the info in the show notes so you can get your tickets there, and we'll see you at Cross Keys. And lastly, and most importantly, thanks for tuning in, laughers. Out of all the podcasts out there, you picked us, and we think that's pretty special, just like you. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. We'll be dropping a new podcast every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so check back for another uplifting episode. Come to an X2 Comedy show or let us bring a show to you. To find out more, head to x2comedy.com. Be sure to share us with a friend. Until next time, cheers.